Welcome to the Commercial Edge podcast with me, Chris Webber. Come and enjoy a virtual coffee while I share my experience and ideas that could help you overcome difficult people at work. I share my thinking and insights so that you can find new ways to overcome challenges and gain a commercial edge and unleash the power of people. Welcome to the episode of the Commercial Edge podcast, and today I'm going to be talking about people who no longer care, how to manage, how to deal with people who just don't seem to be that interested in the same stuff that others have. There's a story behind this, and I'll tell you the story in a second, but let me talk through the episode and explain what we're going to be covering. We're going to talk about these people who at work who no longer feel excited, no longer seem to be motivated and engaged like some of the others in the team. We're going to talk about how work is currently built and what the criteria for success are and how most organizations operate. And then we're going to start to think about where the problems are, where the differences are, and is that something at the heart of why people are no longer interested and no longer care. We're also going to discuss what solutions are. The companies do have this, and in fact, some of them are really good at finding new ways to motivate people, and think a bit bigger. So we're going to talk about some of the solutions and the real power of motivating people and how you change people who don't care into people who become incredible assets. Let me tell you about where this came from. I ran the London Marathon a couple of weeks ago, and I'm right now really proud of what I've achieved. But the moment that I crossed the line, and Sunday was an amazing day. There were hundreds of thousands of people on the streets of London cheering people along. There was music, there was bands, there were over 56,000 runners with me, all focused on completing a marathon. When I crossed the line in the heat of Sunday, middle of the afternoon on Sunday, I felt incredibly disappointed. And I walked through and I collected my medal and I wandered to find and collect my bag. And I sat on the grass feeling incredibly dejected. There I was on St. James's Park in this area reserved exclusively for people who just run 26 miles in 22-degree heat. And I just felt disappointed. And around me, there were these broken bodies, people lying down, some people being sick, people unable to walk properly. And I was just overwhelmed by this feeling. And there were two things, I think, motivating that. The first was a personal disappointment. I'd set myself a target time that I wanted to run, and I wanted to run faster than. And I missed it. I missed it by 8 minutes. And so I was very disappointed in myself. I felt I'd let myself down. I felt I could have done better or whatever. In fact, I didn't, actually. I felt like I'd run as hard as I could on Sunday, and I still didn't reach the standard that I wanted to achieve. And I think that matters because that's the disappointment, feeling like I'd given it my whole. And I was feeling also, now what? I spent the last 5 or 6 months training for this marathon. It's taken hours out of my days. I've been running every day. I've been running long distances on Sundays and Saturdays, been taking 2-3 hours to go and run. It's been a huge thing. And so you get to the end of it, and then you start thinking about, what do I do now? You know, is this it? Is this the end of it? And so it just started to me reflecting on people at work who seem that way, people who no longer seem interested, who no longer care. Now, what's powerful about the marathon was within a few hours, I changed my thinking, changed my approach. But it wasn't me that did it. It was the support of other people. I went to a reception after the event. I was running on behalf of Guide Dogs for the Blind, and I raised a lot of money for them. And when I got there, they'd arranged a reception for friends and family. There were drinks there. There were massages available, which was amazing, by the way. And as I arrived, because they saw I was a runner, they rang a bell into the room and everybody in the room applauded. And I just suddenly felt, yeah, wow, that's amazing. I went and met a friend who'd come to support me to run the marathon. And when I got there, She said to me, "I'm so proud of you. Really well done. That's amazing. What an achievement. You've done fabulous." And then later when I got home, I got such a celebration at home from the people at home, family at home, who were so proud of me and so excited to see the medal and to celebrate. And it changed all of my thinking because it was no longer about me. It was about seeing other people's reactions. And the final thing that was just amazing was as I was heading back to the station to go home, at least 2 or 3 people who I didn't know stopped me in the street and said, "Congratulations." People who'd just been supporting the marathon. I thought that was amazing. And that's when you start to see what you've achieved and what you're proud of. And I think there's something in this around motivation and engaging, that internal versus external. So let's explore this in a little bit. Let's see the people who no longer care and no longer feel excited. Who are they? Well, I think sometimes it's people who have spent many years in the job. They've been around a long time. They've seen things come and go. They've seen managers come and go, strategies come and go, and they've been there and done it. They may well have achieved a lot of things. They may well be someone who has been very successful, made their way through the business, been recognized, been rewarded, and maybe life has changed and they're no longer interested in the same things. 10 years ago, perhaps they were chasing their dreams, perhaps they were focused and motivated, and maybe now they're just not feeling the same way. And I think this is why organizations need to be really aware of this, because what you're taking often are people who are the talent, the skilled people, the successful people, the people who've achieved things, capable people. And they're the ones who are switching off. And actually, there was an event yesterday. I went on a training course yesterday and met some people who were but many of them were thinking about changing their career, thinking about leaving their organization, trying to challenge themselves, do something different. These were great people who had achieved a lot, and they would be missed in their organizations. And so I do believe this is a huge opportunity to deal with people who don't care. And I think it opens up the chance for organizations to overcome barriers around age. So let's just unpick a little bit around how organizations currently motivate people. Well, I think there's a certain criteria for success that people are looking for from their people to motivate their people. There is salary and bonus. And those are there to reward a need for financial security and a sense of achievement. So we give you a bonus, you hit your targets, and you get that sense of pride. You've hit a goal, you've hit an objective, and that salary and that bonus gives you the financial security that you need, the income that people need to support their private and personal lives. Some people are very motivated by contracts, depending which industry you're in. Then, there's a lot of flexible contracts, there's a lot of short-term contracts. And so contracting is a great way to motivate people, either giving them a long-term contract, a longer-term contract, or a permanent role. I know several people who are working on contracts right now, 12 months, 6-month contracts even. And their goal, it would feel motivating to them to be recognized by a permanent contract. And the final classical thing is around promotions, status in the organization. And that rewards people who are motivated by authority, by status, by recognition, and of course the promise of future rewards. So the idea that you're going to get a bigger salary if you're perhaps more senior in the organization, or access to other benefits. And that's the core of reward and recognition. And if you start to connect people who've achieved things, people who have been motivated, people who are successful with what we're supposedly motivating them with, you can start to see the problem. Some people just have enough money. They feel secure. They're in a permanent job. Maybe they've put money aside in their pension. Maybe they've paid off their house. They're not worried anymore about the security of a salary. Maybe they've recognized that they're not going to be promoted anymore. They've reached the pinnacle, or they don't want to be. They don't see the responsibility being attractive to them anymore. How do you connect with these people? Giving them a big bonus, giving them a bigger bonus, offering them a bigger pay rise, it doesn't have the same effect anymore. And there's lots of research in this around what people need to feel satisfied with salary. And once you reach a certain level of income, then the incremental benefit feeling-wise starts to decline. It no longer makes the same effect on people's motivation. And that's a problem for organizations. And I remember working with a client many years ago, and they were negotiating pay with air traffic controllers. And air traffic controllers at that time typically earned very good money. They had very good working conditions in terms of time off, time on, holidays, and they had good pension pots that they had been saving for. And the organisation found it quite difficult to encourage them to do more. There was a shortage of air traffic controllers, and they wanted people to take more overtime or to, encourage them to do more hours. And money just wasn't inspiring enough. And that became a real challenge. And I think there's bigger issues. When I thinking about yesterday, the people who were there, the people who were thinking about leaving their role, they were all saying, you know what, it's just not enough anymore. I'm just not that bothered. But companies do have solutions to this. There are businesses who are motivating outside of this. But I don't know if they're doing them big enough. I don't know if we're really targeting them to the right people even. I've come across organizations where they've got rewards programs. So you earn points from doing things. Sometimes it's lifestyle and health related, do a number of steps or go for a run, you get points, and then you get discounts on things, like shopping, for example. And those can be quite motivating for people, but I don't know if it's big enough. I know there are other companies who have like reward systems, so you can recognize someone in a different department and say you did an amazing job, and here is an award. And I know this exists a lot, but I also know companies don't really encourage it. They don't really encourage because they're worried about budget, or I know people who have tried to give their teams significant rewards for doing hard work, and the company said, no, we're not paying for that. They don't deserve it. But then you ask, why is the point of having these internal rewards and recognition systems if people can't use them, if they're not being utilized? And I guess that's a question. Are you even making the most of these internal systems? Are you creating little prizes, little sprints, little focus pieces of work, and then rewarding and recognizing people for that? For me on Sunday, I would have felt, although I finished feeling frustrated, the fact that people came to me and said, you did an amazing job, made me feel good. And I think a lot of the demotivation from people is feeling like, people just expect me to do this now. I've been doing it for 10 years, doing it for 15 years. It's just the standards that people expect, and it no longer gets noticed. Notice people. Make them feel special. We all want to feel important. And just giving people a reward and recognition, giving them a prize, using the systems you have could be a really powerful asset. And lots of research shows that people prefer prizes to money. So, we're going to reward you with a particular voucher or an event or an activity or something you enjoy is more motivating than, I'm going to give you 50 quid. Because the money allows you to cost it out. If you work extra hours a week to complete a program project on time, and then you're given £100 voucher, you're like, wait a minute, I worked an extra 30 hours to get £100. What's the point? But if you get given something that's non-monetary, then it feels different. Lots of research shows that. So use these things, get behind them. The organization has them in place. Maybe you can use them. But what are thinking about bigger opportunities? People I was talking to yesterday were focused on more than the money, the salary. When I think about running, I was reflecting on why I wanted to run. What is it that motivates me to run? What do I enjoy about running? It isn't running fast times. I am not a fast runner, not a distance runner. And in fact, it's the opposite. I'm very uncomfortable running long distances. It's hard for me. I grew up as a sprinter. I played rugby. I was a fast player in rugby. And that's not about long distance. It's about short 10, 20 meter bursts. So I'm not motivated by smashing my personal best, really. When I thought about it, I like the adventure. I like the challenge. I like the mental challenge. I like the physical challenge. I like the adventure of going somewhere new. Some of my favorite places over the last few years have been adventures. I ran in Morocco in September, and it was stunning. We're in the mountains, setting off early morning, seeing the sunrise over the Moroccan Atlas Mountains. Those are amazing memories for me. And if it hadn't been for running, I wouldn't have been there. The times were terrible, but I really enjoyed those 2 days and those 2 marathons. And so when you tap into what really motivates people, then you shift the thinking, you shift the structure of what you're doing. Maybe there are some people who are really motivated by mentoring. They want to support others in the team. Are you giving them the opportunity to be mentors? Lots of companies don't. They line manage, but they don't allow this mentoring and support systems across function, across different departments. Is there something you can do to say, hey, you're doing a great job, maybe you can be a mentor? Is there someone who is motivated by values and purpose, doing something bigger? In which case, maybe there's something you can do with them around the purpose of the business and the values and giving something back. Perhaps there are charity partners that you could work with. Maybe they're motivated by their family and relationships with people around them, and they want time with them, and that's what's going to give back to them. Or maybe it's about their own personal learning and development. So many people this week, when I met them, were saying, I just feel like I'm not learning anymore. And staying in the same job is not giving me the opportunity to learn and develop. And in fact, one person was saying, I don't even feel like I'm tapping into creativity. And I love creativity. I want to be more creative. And so I want to step sideways now and think about what is the purpose for contracting staff? Why do we even bring people into our business? I think it's simple. To achieve business goals, we need people to help us deliver stuff. We spend a lot of time and money to find the right people, to train them, and then to give them the confidence and empowerment and experience to deliver what they're supposed to deliver. If you get to the point where they're not motivated by money, and they then start to think about leaving your organization or just switching off, that's a huge cost in productivity. Now, there is a school of thought which is, well, that's fine, because if they're not working, they're not being productive, then I want rid of them. I only want people who are motivated. But what you're actually saying is, I only want people who are motivated by the things I want them to be motivated by. Salary, by bonuses. What I'm going to talk about in a second is saying, well, those cost you stuff, right? You're increasing their salary, you're increasing their bonuses, and there's a cost to the organization. You could get productivity from them in a much cheaper way, motivate and engage them, and still deliver what you need, still have the right people in your organization, if you're prepared to think about doing it slightly differently. If you tap into the power of motivation, then you're thinking about tapping into resources of people who are currently holding back your organization because they're just drifting along, and turning those into people who are being more productive and more focused. And the solutions that you can come up with could actually be cheaper than salary, cheaper than bonus, cheaper than trying to give people promotions and making up job titles. And it will help your business to become a more welcoming, more inclusive, more cooperative, and better performing organization, because you're asking them to bring more to the organization than just doing your job. I've already talked about mentoring, getting these people to become mentors in your organization, getting them involved in informal support. Could they be running training courses? Could they be helping other people to learn on the job? How do you bring your new people into the organization? Is there someone you can partner them with? What about space for personal projects? I know a guy who is a coach, and he did his coaching qualification and then became a coach in the organization that he was working in. They gave him space. His job was nothing to do with coaching. And then eventually they allowed him to do like 1 day a week outside of the business, coaching people. And he was starting to coach formally people in the business. He was way more engaged, and they got many more years working from him because they supported this outside project. And I think there are people who who want to do other things outside their job, and the choice that they seem to have is, I need to leave my job to do these things. What if you allow them the space to do it? It might be about part-time contracts. It might be about flexible contracts. It might be just generally giving them some time off. Maybe there's an opportunity, and that will motivate and inspire and retain people who you really want in your organization, you really want supporting the rest of your teams. And there's also personal learning. I know some companies now are pretty good at allowing people to do learning of any type, and they get a budget to do learning of any type. And I think this is a good idea, but I think it's targeted maybe at the wrong groups. Maybe it's targeted at people who are coming in. And I've heard people say, if you want to go and use the money to go and learn to surf, then off you go. But there are others who have personal learning. Are you doing enough? Could there be more you do? And then you can start to think about things like allowing people to buy extra holidays. So, there's always a lot of limits on this. But if they're buying the holidays, they're sacrificing their salary, then it's cost neutral as long as productivity is happening. And you can make it conditional on delivering objectives, or you can discuss it. But there's certain flexibility around, are you being flexible enough in your contracting, in the way you'll let people do things? And finally, I'd love you to think about special purpose projects and secondments. We keep those often for people who are looking for promotions, looking for experience in other departments. But what about just seconding people into a different role because they've got something to bring to it? You've got a finance project and maybe you want to put someone commercial in it because they have a lot to offer. And typically these are leadership, positions, right? I'm going to sit on this leadership group and whatever. I was at a session yesterday and we were talking about implementation of decision making, and implementation is often left to the end, and the decisions are taken and strategies are developed without input. Maybe there's an opportunity to bring these people into leadership meetings, not to make decisions, but as someone who can inform that decision. Just think differently about engaging and recognizing that they are making significant contributions to the business and that they're motivated this way. And I think if you think that way, you can just be more flexible, more personal. You're going to get more out of all of these people. I hope that's food for thought. I'm really interested to hear what you think. And if you feel this way, am I right? Is there some stuff that you think would be useful in terms of changes to your contract and the way your organization uses your experience or allows you a bit more freedom? And I'd love you to share this with someone who you believe is feeling this way right now, is uncertain about their future, or organizations who are trying to think more creatively about retaining staff. Pass it on to them, because I think I'd love to have a conversation with them about deeper thoughts here. Thanks for listening to the Commercial Edge podcast. I'll be back soon with another episode. Join me then when we delve into more difficult conversations. See you next time.